Hello. Now that we've got the wiring roughly routed throughout the van and we can see approximately where they're going to go, next we're going to begin working on the insulation. And we're going to be attacking insulation in 3 different ways. First one is going to be noise cancellation. Second one is going to be sort of thermal heat entrapment. And then the third one is going to be preventing vapor from reaching the outside and condensating. So the first thing we're going to do is tackle the resonance of the van itself. This is effectively a big old floppy metal can. Little tap. That when you're driving along the road, it's going to be flopping all over the place and it's going to be creating a lot of noise through the panels vibrating. And so to tackle that, we've got these sound deadening panels that effectively just add mass to the floppy panels and just helps cut down on the natural resonance of these things. The thing you need to look out for when you're installing these is making sure you don't install too many, because they do add a considerable amount of weight to the van, and in some areas, particularly the roof, there's already corrugations in it that stop this resonance from occurring. So try and be selective about this, because honestly, even though I knew this before installing these panels, I still think we managed to go overkill, and we certainly didn't need this many. With the sound deadening panels installed, next we moved on to installing a Thermo acoustic liner. This is designed to go directly over the sound deadening panels and does exactly what it says on the tin. It both helps to trap in heat and it also helps to prevent noise transfer through the walls of the van, which is obviously good for cutting out external noises coming into the van and also privacy within the van. While this stuff isn't a completely necessary step for the majority of the van, I would say it is absolutely essential for the area above the cabin. Because it's such a large area at risk of condensation with so many curves on it, I think you'd struggle to insulate it through any other means than this stuff. So I'd highly recommend getting some of this matting for the area above the cab at the very least. So I've put a link to this and all the other products we're using in this video in the description below. The next step was to install Rockwool, which, as with everything in van conversions, is an insulation material that's up for debate. Should you use it? Should you not use it? Is it actually the best thing to use? Effectively, we just needed something that we could stuff into all the cavities of the van that the rigid insulation we're going to be using after this wouldn't be able to reach. If you're looking for a more eco-friendly approach, those do exist, but I mean, this is a diesel van. Come on, who are we kidding here? The thing I would suggest with Rockwool, however, is in the lower areas of the van, put it in some plastic bags before installation. This won't affect the thermal properties of it whatsoever, but if you were to get any leakage, particularly through the handles on the back door, the plastic bags will help add a little bit of water resistance to it and prevent the Rockwool from soaking up that moisture. Okay, so before I start insulating this door, let me show you what the current situation is with the water flooding into it. Flooding is a little bit of an overstatement, but despite sealing around the handle and all that, turns out that the water is still getting into these areas that I can't close up without affecting the handle mechanism. I don't doubt it's improved the situation, but it's definitely not fully fixed it. So what I've done on the inside, it's a little bit rudimentary, so don't judge me, but I've adhered this wooden batten to the inside of the door where the water leak starts, and there's a little bead of silicone on the top as well to act as a sort of river, and that'll mean that any small amount of water that comes down from above will be redirected to the side of the door, going all the way back here into an area where the lock mechanism is, which is an area that I can't Rockwool anyway, and then it will go down into the nearest drainage hole, which is at the lowest point of the door there. It's not ideal and it is somewhat of a temporary solution. I think long term what I'll do is make some sort of like handle cover or something like that, or buy them. I don't really know, but this will suffice for the time being. The next step was to add rigid insulation board. Now, my biggest lesson from this is don't try and maximize the thickness of it. If you've got a cavity that's about 70 millimeters thick, get a rigid board that's about 50 or 60. Don't buy the 70 mil stuff, because I spent ages carving these panels up to match all of the dips and bumps within each of the cavities, that honestly it would have been a much better use of my time to just buy something that was 10 millimeters thinner, and I wouldn't need to get so perfect on the back in order to make it flush on the front. Okay, so I've just got the roof battens in position. That's kind of a video in itself, so I'll link that here. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, I'm going to link that in a separate video if you want to know how I've done those. But for now, I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix this Celotex to the roof. Now, as you can see, I've cut a little fold in it. It's still joined by the foil on the front, but that's just going to allow it to match the curvature of the roof a little bit better rather than bridge a straight line across and sort of impede on the living area here. So that's cut. It bends quite nicely. It fits up here really nicely. Wedge it up. There we go. That'll sit up there nicely, and once the cladding's in position, it should sit behind it quite nicely. But to actually fix it in position, we are going to be using these rather nasty looking things. It is a big old spike with a self-adhesive pad on the back, super sticky, and these are just going to be stuck on the roof, and then the insulation comes up underneath. Shout out to Greg Virgo for suggesting this method, because honestly, the other methods I've seen for doing this are a bit shit. This is definitely the way to go. So on this one, I've got the hole here, which is where the solar cables will be coming through. So I just need to mark that on the board, wherever it's going to land. Cutting this ceiling insulation was so much easier than the walls. Although again, I think I bought insulation that was slightly too thick because I really had to mash it up into the ceiling to make sure it wouldn't intrude on the cladding. So as you can see, I got into quite a nice flow with this in the end. I found out that using a Ryoba saw was really nice for cutting the insulation. The marking gauge on my Hultafors tape measure was insanely useful. Honestly, I can't recommend this tape measure enough most of the time, but when it came to doing this insulation, it really came into its own. So by this point, all of the rigid board was in position and was fixed in place on the ceiling. However, on the walls, it was just either wedged or taped into position. So I made the most of the opportunity now to do any final adjustments needed to get the rigid board flush with the inside of the van, and I found out that using a multi-tool was quite nice to do this carving on the back. But by the end of it, it looked pretty nice from a distance. As soon as you got up close, the gaps around the panels became a bit more obvious, and so to fill these, I used expanding foam. This expanding foam would also help to stick the panels in position so they wouldn't just be relying on the tape that I'm currently holding them up with. And if I'm honest, it worked wonders. I've put a link to the specific foam I used in the description because I found the gun quite nice to use, it expanded really nicely, and once it was dried I could just go back and cut away the excess with a knife. The thing to watch out for when using this expanding foam is making sure it doesn't expand into any of the mechanical areas such as the locks or the sliding mechanisms or windows or skylights, you know, just anything that you want to move. Just leave the panels in those areas until last so you get an idea of what the typical expansion is of your foam, so then you don't end up creating an absolute mess like I did while doing the ceiling. Honestly, I ended up getting this stuff everywhere. It was in my hair, it was down my back, but hey, at least I know it's well insulated. Alright, so at last, all the insulation is in place. It's taken me probably about 5 days to get this all in position, but I'm very certain. Is that a gap? It seems I missed a bit. Just to save any cleaning up, we'll just hide that. There we go. As I was saying, now I'm certain that all of the gaps are closed up in this van. It's taken about 4 to 5 days plus 1 minute to get this done. And so next we need to add this, which is a double-sided foil barrier, and it's what's referred to as a Vapour Barrier. I won't get into the real theory of it because there's tons of great videos on this already, particularly by Greg Virgo, so I'll put those in the description below. But in a nutshell, this is an impermeable barrier that prevents warm, moist air from inside the van reaching the cold metal shell of the van, thus creating condensation. This would be an issue because condensation is obviously creating water. I wouldn't be able to see it because it's behind this insulation. I wouldn't be able to get to it because it's behind this insulation, and water on metal creates rust and all sorts of other issues. So that's it in a nutshell, but as with all of these things, it is worth knowing the theory about how and why condensation is formed because it will help you diagnose or fix any future issues you have with condensation, as you'll know exactly how and why it's been created, rather than just blindly follow me, put a vapor barrier in expecting it to work for you. And so once this foil barrier is in position, it will be secured in place using wooden battens that I'm then going to use to screw the cladding into. But that's not going to be the only thing holding this foil in position. Down here, I've picked up this stapler, which will go straight into insulation and holds the staple really nicely, really securely, which allows me to fix the foil barrier to so many positions on this wall. And then for the metal areas, I've got this, which is a spray contact adhesive. I've just realized it's expired, but fortunately I did pick up a new one here, so that should work just fine. And as you can see, this barrier is pretty damn big, but what I'm going to do is fix it into position first and then just cut around it to match these windows afterwards. I should easily be able to feel whereabouts they are, but we'll see. So we've got a nice square edge on the end of this roll. That should match up nicely with this edge in the van, just where the bulkhead used to be. It's looking good. So I reckon what I'll do is let's just fix it there to begin with. Oh, that works beautifully. And then we'll just peel that back and fix it in place with a bit of spray adhesive. Not too much. And we'll just let it tack up a little bit. I've decided that what I'm going to do is, as I go along, I'm just going to rough cut out the areas where the wires and stuff are coming through, the windows and all that, because I can always come back and tape it off later. It's just going to be much easier for me to do this now, so I can stick the barrier down and then not have to remember where these conduits are coming in and out the wall and where the windows are. It's just rough cutting for now, while also not trying to scratch the window.
Now, speaking from experience, this starts off relatively easy. You're just covering everything in a foil barrier. But as you go along, you'll start facing difficulties here and there. It'll start off with minor difficulties like cutting around the windows and then taping to the window frame in order to create that permanent seal. But then you'll start getting to weird areas like the locks on the doors, or the area where the fuse board's going in and all of the wires are coming out of the wall. It's areas like this where you've pretty much just got to accept that you're not going to get it bang on. You can be pretty creative with them, don't get me wrong. I definitely put a considerable amount of time into this vapor barrier in order to try and get it perfect. But with some areas, you're just not going to get it all the way there. And what I've come to realize is it's more about mitigating condensation rather than completely preventing it when it comes to van conversions.
All right, so walls, doors, done. A little bit messy around the edges, I must say, but that's what the tape's for, just to sort of refine that. But we'll do that later on, because for now, we need to do the roof. But before going along, I'm just going to put a very clear marking as to where each of these battens are, so that I can easily screw up into them when it comes to putting on the cladding. To editing, Matt, there is no last clip. You forgot to turn the camera on, because you were stupid. Forgot to turn the camera on for this bit, but here's where we are. Slowly getting there.
Now, I should acknowledge at this point that there are two schools of thought when it comes to vapor barriers in vans. Some say they are absolutely essential because they prevent condensation from forming inside the van. However, if you look in the other direction, those people are saying that the only thing a vapor barrier is going to achieve is you trapping moisture within the walls of the van, because it's not going to be able to breathe into the warm living space. So while installing this vapor barrier, I had plenty of people telling me not to, but the reason I wanted to do this is, to be honest, I just wanted the experience. I've never done insulation before. I barely even know the principles behind condensation, if I'm completely honest. But this project for me is just about learning new skills, and so I wanted to take this process to the bitter end, or hopefully the warm end actually. I put a fair amount of work into this, but hopefully I've been able to pass on some of the lessons I learned while researching and carrying out the insulation process. And of course, all of the products I'm using in this video will be in the description below. And as always, these will be affiliate links, and so if you purchase something by using them, I'll get a small commission at no extra cost to you. But as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to press the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video where I'll show you how I did that roof battening.